Welcome to Cultivate the Ordinary podcast, curious conversations for the anxious, frustrated, dejected, and bored. I'm Travis.
And I'm Jessie. So often we're held captive by screens, schedules, and media that's mind-numbing and polarizing. This leaves us seeing dimly through a fog. We want to spark more imagination and a better awareness of God's presence in the everyday.
Join us on a fun journey of discovery and curiosity as we look at the ordinary through the lenses of joy, wonder, beauty, and hope. I want to open today's episode with an excerpt from the book The Christian Imagination, and this is from Lucy Shaw, a poet, where she talks about beauty and creativity. She says, "And our own creation of beautiful things links us with our Creator. God was the first quilter of prairies, the primal painter, night skies, ferns, thunderheads, snow on cedars, the archetypal metal sculptor, mountain ranges, icebergs, the composer who heard the whale's strange, sonorous clickings and songs in his head long before there were whales to sound them, the playwright who plotted the sweeping drama of creation, incarnation, redemption, the poet whose words said it all. God made us human beings in his image. We participate in creative intelligence, giftedness, and originality. We each have the faculty of imagination deep within us, waiting like a seed to be watered and fertilized. Imagination gives us pictures by which to see things the way they can be or the way they are underneath." I'm really excited to have my good friend on the podcast today, Everett Conaway, who does a lot of things. He's a jack of all trades, but the feature I want to look at today with him is his woodworking craft. So before I let Everett talk a little bit about himself, I'll just introduce him as a friend and kind of what he means to me. But so Everett's been a former missionary with his wife. He's an entrepreneur, a musician, an educator. We work together at a children's home. That's kind of our entry point into our relationship. And then he builds stuff in this epic tool shop, this workshop he's got, which we're actually recording the podcast in today. When I reached out to Everett on this last minute to do this, which he's been super cool about, he was like, "Yeah, can we do it in the?" I think you just asked that, didn't you? Like, or should we do it in the?
Yeah.
Maybe because we were gonna get kicked out of the house with the ladies here today, but. But I was like, it's only fitting we're in the wood shop. So I almost feel like we need to start up a tool or something to prove that we're in here, but maybe something like that.
Yeah, we're in here. I can get them all fired up.
So but for me, Everett's one of those friends that, like, we could be in a conversation about the church, about theology, about punk rock, about smoking things on a grill. What else we can get lost in? Is that...
a variety of topics. Late 90s Christian indie music.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just add it all up. And so one of the things that when I think of just friendship, and I think of my friendship with Everett, I was just thinking back to a story. This was several years ago, but he reached out to me one time on the phone, and just the tone of his voice, I could tell that, something wasn't kind of right or something. And it was such a beautiful, vulnerable moment that he shared, where he kind of was stumbling a little bit of his words and almost said something apologetic. Like, I feel like you said something like, "I'm not even sure exactly why I'm calling you," or something, but I had to, something just happened and I just had to share it with someone. And it was that his granddad had just passed away. And it was just one of the most, I'm not trying to diminish the grief that you were originally, just in that moment. But for me as a friend to just felt like I'm reached out to so he can even start to process his own grief or your feelings it was a gift, in a way for me.
Yeah, and that's interesting for you to say. And I appreciate you bringing that back. I did remember that even as I was talking to you earlier this week, just thinking about how we process grief. It's so interesting. Interestingly enough, you can hear that clock. My granddad made that clock.
Wow.
Yeah, so it hangs in my shop and chimes.
We all just heard that.
Yeah, so that's pretty wild. But Yeah, I think that's it is good. It was good to have somebody to lean into, to help me process that. And so, yeah, I think that there's been a lot of connections that you and I have had,
Yeah.
in situations where we're in deep places. We've worked with kids long enough together to to have gone through
Right.
some very challenging circumstances together, for
Right.
sure.
For sure. All right. So tell us a little bit more of, I kind of set up some about you and what you've done in your family. Anything else you want to share just about yourself, your family, or?
I mean, you gave a pretty good synopsis of it. We've originally we're from Florida, North Florida, and then moved subsequently down to Costa Rica for learning language, Spanish language, and then we moved to Ecuador for a couple of years where we worked with some missionaries that were already established there to work in the jungle with the Shuar Indians, and then from there we went and worked at a children's home in Argentina, Mendoza, Argentina. We lived there for nearly 4 years, and then moved back to the States. We were in North Carolina, and then ended up in Clinton, South Carolina, which is where we currently reside, to work at Thornwell Children's Home, and that's where Travis and I met. And then worked there as house parents for nearly 5 years, and then served in the office there. And then last year I made the move to Thornwell Charter School, working in behavior. I'm a behavior skills coach working with elementary students this year. So yeah, keeping it real.
Keeping it real. Yeah, and it's just like your life touches so much of life and all different facets, all the things that you've done and the things that you guys have served and done. So it's really powerful and cool. So yeah, we're going to kind of transition into just hearing more from Everett about, where he gets inspiration, and we're going to talk about the creative process, and especially when it comes to his craft and the art of woodworking. So that's going to be where we're going to land today. So before we get into the craft and kind of talking more about woodworking, what's inspiring you lately right now?
Well, as far as woodworking goes, it's kind of on a bit of a lull because this year's my first year. I'm an assistant baseball coach. So baseball season is cranking up. So it has slowed in the shop somewhat. But just I like to find ideas and try to think through ideas that are fresh and that are challenging for me. So, just seeing what other people are making, whether that be on Instagram or however I see it, just finding ideas and seeing how things are put together and seeing what people are doing out there. So I do get a lot of inspiration from others, from seeing what other creatives are doing, and then trying to learn how they did it. So yeah, I just like I like seeing that from other people.
Very cool. So you're saying kind of there's, in some ways, you're a student of creativity too within the craft,
absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, when I think about you too, and then is obviously woodworking is a craft, it's a skill, but there's a level too. I know with you in the creative side is that there's even I would call you an innovator and in a way an inventor. And so it seems like a lot of the stuff that you're doing and building isn't just following, there's a skill to it for sure, but then you're also creating, would you say, new things or often, or?
Yeah, I've always been drawn to the act of creation. So to take something from an idea that I can see, this isn't like, it doesn't happen every time. Sometimes it's very utilitarian. I need to make this to do this thing or whatever it may be. But sometimes I can see a final product in my head, and there's times where it wakes me up early in the morning, and I can't wait to get out into the shop to see what it looks like in real life, because I can see it in my head,
right?
And then to get it out. I've done that. I've painted a few things. I'm not a great painter by any means, but I've seen things in my head, and I just have to get them out. I wish that was the case with music. I do play music as well, but I don't write a lot of music.
Okay.
But I think that for some people, it's probably very similar
Sure.
to where you just have something inside of you that's trying to
Yeah.
get out. For
Yeah.
me, it's mostly now through creating things out of wood.
Sure. I love that. And I think I've said that similarly in another podcast of where, the creative process, for some, I know even Henry Nouwen talks about, like, for him writing, it was almost like the practice of writing got out what was in him. So it was like that was what was there, that created the output that he sort of discovered. And others will talk about what you've said, and what I often resonate with is this idea of something actually just needs to get out of you, and it may have already come upon you, and you're kind of obeying this impulse to create what's just popped in.
Yeah.
And so I love that. And it's interesting that you're kind of seeing that more maybe with woodworking than it is with, say, music itself, or I don't know. But like you said, you're not writing a lot or necessarily writing music.
Yeah, but any of that process of making something that wasn't there before, it's intoxicating. It's just it's something that you see people, and I don't consider myself like the tortured artist or anything like that, but I do understand how some people it leads to a demise of sorts because it's such an amazing feeling to look at something that wasn't there an hour ago and now is here in the world, and it's tangible. It's something you can pick up, look at, or listen to, or smell, or whatever, that didn't exist until you made it. And it's quite a feeling to be able to bring something into the world
that didn't. And would you say, I love how you described that, something that didn't exist, the intoxicating feeling of creating something. I mean, I would believe, I've said this, I believe, some people don't describe themselves as being creative, but I believe that all humans bearing the image of God are creative. It's in our DNA. And I wonder if there is something to coming alive in those moments of, like, we almost feel a sense of, like, that God-like nature put into us of, like, this was something from nothing. And I sort of imaged faintly what the creator did.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to veer off into the grandiose, and we're going to make
follow us.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we're some people are going to roll their eyes a bit and say, goodness, what are these guys even talking about? But as when you reached out to me earlier today to talk about this, one of the things that kind of popped in my head was the juxtaposition between creativity or creating things and consumerism. And I think that it's just kind of, creativity is the natural state and consumerism is the perverse state. It's the twisted state of that. So we are we're consuming things. We can see it on a very practical level. I mean, you have things that, I've made furniture, and I'm not, this isn't to pat myself on the back, but I've made furniture out of real wood with real materials with real time and effort. And then you have things from IKEA that there's a difference in those. One is made to be consumed, and one is made to cherish and to last, and it's built in such a way that it will outlast a lot of other things that are just built to be consumed. So as I was thinking about just a mass production kind of thing, and we see it in music, we see it in any creative endeavor. You have, and this is going to sound a bit snobbish of me, and I don't intend it to, but you have people who are just they're pursuing the next hit.
Yep.
And that's what they get. And whatever. It is what it is, but it's a very consumeristic kind of mindset that takes it out of the realm of passionately creating something to just trying to find something that you can sell for $1. And then you chase the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And to me, that's very, I don't know. It just doesn't. It's not for me personally. It's not very life giving.
Right.
Because like if I buy something from a artisan, or even from a musician, or whatever it is, it connects me on some level. It speaks to me on some level. Whereas if I go down to the Dollar Tree, those things aren't speaking to me. Those are things to be bought for $1, consumed, and thrown in the garbage. And it's not. It's there's just, to me, just that juxtaposition. I find that to be a very interesting place to think about. How those two things work in opposites or whatever, where you have creation and that sort of thing versus just mass production. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I haven't fleshed it out. That's just what popped in my head when
right.
you
No,
reached out earlier.
It does make me think of just that whole thing of what you were saying in the line of thinking, that I just want to sit and think with that more, because it totally makes sense. And I, like you said, the relationship between the created good and then that, personal touch to connect to that, versus just like a mass produced thing that there's no, you don't even have any part of the story, the origin story of it, besides it was like maybe a factory or whatever. But yeah. So, and I think when is that part of why we're, there's this a little bit of nostalgia around, whether it's metalwork, woodwork, some of these crafts that just, it feels like for many of us in the consumer marketplace, just with where we are in society and knowing, like, these all just seem like they're things from back in time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it was out of necessity at some point because there were no factories and there were no department stores. But I do think that there is a rebirth of some of this stuff. There is a desire to have things that are made from an actual person who, like if I go to craft shows, I see it differently now, I think, because sometimes I set up at craft shows and I'm there. And when I go to them, I'll see something that I really want or something that really speaks to me. And now I'm willing to pay a little more than I used to be, because I'm like, this person, if I pay them to buy this thing that they made with their hands, not only is it something typically of quality, and quite unique, but also that this person is in turn feeding their family, or
right.
There's just this communal aspect that you don't get in our normal current way things are
For
done,
sure.
in commerce.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
No, yeah, for sure. Kind of pivoting a little bit. And this is one of my favorite quotes of all time, but the pastor and civil rights activist Howard Thurman once said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that, because the world needs people who have come alive." Do you resonate with that idea when it comes to the craft, your art of woodworking? Like, how does that make you feel like you come alive in a different way, or a new way?
Yes. Yeah, I would say completely yes. Just I get what he's saying, because there is, because everybody wants to sell if you're making things to sell, you want them to sell.
Right.
And I've asked myself the question before, what's going to sell? What do I think people will like? And it's a fine question, and I've ended up making things that I do enjoy, and I'm glad I made them, and people have bought them, and that's all well and good. But there's other things that I've made, going back to the beginning of this, just because they were in my head. And even if there is nobody that comes in and says, "Oh, this is the perfect thing I was looking for," I hope they do. I hope that somebody
Right.
sees it and they want it and it means a lot to them. But the fact that it means a lot to me is very life-giving. If I can connect with somebody who likes what I've done, that makes it even more. But to just the the making of things with my hands gives me so much energy, and just it brings a lot of joy to me.
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that, and we'll get a little bit more into like the curiosity side and wonder and how it all connects us here as well. A little bit of the backstory then, and then getting into the present with what you're doing with woodworking. So, kind of learn this craft as a kid growing up, or where did that go from, and then how did to the present day?
It's kind of been patchwork. So my dad has always been very handy.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember as a kid when I was around 10 years old, we moved. They bought a house that needed a lot of renovations. He added built a whole nother room, the kitchen, our living room. He built all of that, and I can remember that as a kid. When we would go to school, we would come home, and he would have us jobs to do while he was at work, and so then he would work on putting up what we did that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was some element of that, of just seeing how he did, just being learning how to solve problems. That's one of the things that I really like about woodworking, is that usually it's a puzzle that has to be figured out.
Okay.
And that's a lot of fun to me. So just being a problem solver, I think, comes from him. My mom taught me how to sew when I was little. I used to make clothes for my bears, and like my stuffed bears and such. So they're both very creative people and have abilities to work with their hands. And then we went as missionaries, went overseas, and a lot of times you can't just run to the store and buy what you need, so you have to figure out ways to make things work. I also worked with a friend of mine doing some contracting work, and he taught me some stuff, laying tile and all this kind of thing. So it all kind of works together, just to learn that I can do these things and
Right.
and make these things work. So then we moved to Thornwell, and there's as a family teacher, as a house parent, there was this kind of week on, week off kind of routine, and not being satisfied to just lay around for a week.
Right.
Just trying to find something to do. And one of the guys at Thornwell, he gave me this little dovetail saw. I don't even know why he gave it to me. I don't know where he got it. I don't know. I don't know. I still have it. But he gave it to me. I didn't have any tools because we had moved here from overseas, or we passed through North Carolina, but I didn't really have any tools to speak of. So I had bought like a drill for hanging up pictures in our off-duty housing, and stuff like that. I had a hammer, and then he gave me this saw.
Okay.
And so we had this beneath the deck of the house where we lived at Thornwell. There was this screen frame thing. It was kind of rotten. I took it apart and made a frame for my wife to just frame these pictures that spell out our name and whatever, whatever. And I loved it, and she was so happy with it, and I was like, oh, that was a lot of fun. And so then I took this little small handful of tools and made something else, and then made something else. And then I found that I could take pallet boards, and I could make guitar stands out of them, and I actually sold some. Bought a few more tools, and then had the capability of making bigger things, and I made other things, and then it just grew. And then when we bought our house, I remodeled our house, learned a lot of stuff there. Also, I bought some tools for doing that. So then I had more tools, and it's just evolved into what it is today, where it's become a little, business of making things and selling things.
Right.
And it was never really my intention to do this. It's just every step kind of led to the next step, and I just enjoyed every step of that process, and that got me here. And it just it's always been something. It's never, I hope it never becomes like a drudgery. I've made a few things that are cornhole boards. I always use an example. I do not like making cornhole boards because they're all exactly the same.
Okay.
And I know there's artistry in it, but
Sure.
but for me, I found it to be very stifling. And I overall, I find what I do to be very life-giving.
Yeah.
And I hope that it never becomes like a drudgery. Like, oh, I have to go out and make this thing today. I'm always excited to get out here. And so that excitement kind of led me to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. And I try to think, like I'm thinking about right now, my next step of this is to get into turning wood with a lathe, which is a whole nother world that I have no tools, no capacity for, but I want to get into that because it seems like it would open up a lot of possibilities. Every step has kind of been that. What can I do to make better things, to bring more things into this world? And so I've completely lost track of your question that led us down this path, but how it started. It started small and it's just grown, and who knows where it's going to go from here.
It is funny because again, like I said, we're actually recording this in his workshop, his wood shop. What are we calling it?
I call it a workshop.
A workshop. Okay. And even the size of your shop continues to expand. It's super cool inside, all your music and decorations and stuff. But like, it's almost like the wood shop itself kind of mirrors the world of how this has grown as it's growing too.
It is, yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's all of this is kind of date stamped. Like this is where we're sitting is kind of where it started, and then that's the new part over behind us. But.
So we don't have a video podcast, or you get to see the whole inner workings of where the magic happens. So as we transition a little bit now into the present of this business, like you set up well, of it became this thing that snowballed, got bigger, your passion grew, probably more capacity and time. You have this, I love, like you've already said, your sense of matchmaking, maybe the wrong word here, but like when you make a product, to see the customer get it and to know and to wonder what their expectation or what's going to happen when they get it. But it seems like you're so tuned in and connected to the experience on the other end, not just the making and building, but then also the receiving and sort of the handoff of that. And so is that...
No, and that's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that really keeps me going and excited about it is that I have made things. I've made, for example, dining room tables, and to know that tonight there's going to be somewhere a family sitting eating dinner around a table that I made, having conversations, raising their kids, doing homework, whatever they do, around a table that I made, that they thought enough of to bring into their home and center their family community around that table. It's just amazing, to make something to hang on a wall that they took home and hung on their wall.
Right.
That when they have guests over, we'll see it. It's just, it really does a lot for me to know that people find enough joy in what I've made that they are willing to buy it and then take it to their house and display it. I think is amazing.
And I love that. And it's fun to sit and talk to you about this, because you've done that stuff for me, than me being a friend, but also a customer, where, at Shiny Eyes Retreat, you created this bare wood piece of art that when I look at it, I see this amazingly beautiful thing, and I also think of you.
Oh,
it's just nice. Cool that I know the magician behind the
There you
craft
go.
on that one. So that's really fun. So tell us. So you started then a business, kind of a side hustle that continues to seem like it's growing as well. But Sixth Interval Designs.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what's the origin of that name, and then just about the business itself.
So years ago, I had drawn a picture. I play a little bit of piano, I play guitar, I play bass, but I had drawn a picture of this guitar neck and a piano keyboard kind of swirling into each other. Whatever, it's hard to it does irrelevant to this story. But I had signed it at the bottom with my initials, but on a music scale because my
Okay.
name is Everett Conaway. So E C. So I had signed it with like an E and a C on a treble clef kind of bar, whatever.
Okay.
The word escapes me. Anyways, so I that was years ago, and so as I was thinking about, hey, I want to kind of start this as a business. What I'm going to do for a name. I thought that would make a good logo because again, it's
Yep.
my initials, but it's kind of hidden in this kind of code of music language. Very, very nerdy. I recognize that, but the space between an E and a C in music theory is a sixth. The interval
Okay.
between the two is a sixth. So that's why sixth interval design. And then my logo is an E and a C. Some people ask me about it. A lot of people don't.
Right.
Some people go, "Oh, I see what you did there," before they ask me about it.
Okay.
And I always like it when people figure it out on
Nice.
their own.
Nice.
But now all of these people listening are gonna know. But
The secret.
that's right. All the millions of people. So it that's where it comes from
Yep.
is from that just my name.
Yep.
And then yeah, so I started it. It has progressively gotten larger to the point to this year I'm informing the IRS that I exist because it has gotten bigger and I'm grateful for that because I have people that have sought me out to make things, sought me out to restore things that they have that are kind of falling apart and they want to last. So it is growing. I'm delighted about it, but I don't really have grand ambitions. I love my day job a whole bunch, and I don't really see this replacing that.
Right.
But just being able to feed the habit of buying tools, buying records, that sort of thing.
Right.
That's what that's where I put money back into this just to
Right.
make better things.
For
So,
sure.
yeah.
Well, someday you can look back on the legacy and how long maybe this business goes by the time you're starting to restore stuff you've actually made.
Yeah, yes,
Or
exactly.
maybe
That
it
is
speaks
true.
to the quality of what you're making. So we've talked already some on Everett with your creative process. You kind of explained that and set that up really well of just kind of how a lot of times how creativity flows with you and as how you see projects. Like I said earlier, I think that you're very innovative and to me, you're an inventor as well. And so looking back, we've talked about some of the stuff you've helped me on. My brother, who I've shared some about already, was in a traumatic, or had a traumatic brain injury from a car wreck about 15 years ago. And to this day, he's really trapped in his body, as we'd say, relegated to a bed or a wheelchair, 24/7 care, tube feedings, etc. He is fully there, though. He can spell with either a machine or use the alphabet and manually use his arm and we point to a letter. And anyway, he can talk to us through that. Jeremy loved music. I think way back in the day, Red Hot Chili Peppers was a band. He loved a lot of groups and music and Beach Boys and Everett's a mutual friend also with Jeremy and has been around some in his life. And I reached out one time to Everett because I had this idea of how could we, so Jeremy, I thought back a long time ago of an idea where we got him to be able to paint by using his foot that he has limited mobility to do. But it also got me to thinking is there a way Jeremy could play music by this little movement of his foot? And I thought, I know a guy. If ever there was a guy that could tackle creating some kind of pop instrument, and so I reach out, and then you take it from here. What do you remember?
Yeah. Yeah, this was early on too, very early in my making of things days. But as I started thinking through what could we make, I'm going to try to describe this. It's not going to be easy. You have to really visualize it. But I took a board, essentially the size of like a 2x8 or it must have been about a 2x8, 2x10, something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, doesn't matter. And I had, it's a stringed instrument like a guitar. So if it's about 5 feet wide,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, And so on the two extreme ends, you have three strings coming up through the board and then coming towards the center. And then they overlap about a foot in the center. So on either side, you have about a foot of three strings, and then in the middle, you have a foot of six strings. Oh gosh, I lost everybody so far. And then we tuned them to a triad, getting in the weeds here, where one is a G, one is a C. So he could pluck individually those strings on either side. There's two chords.
Yep.
And in the middle, there was a blend of the two chords with the six strings. So, and then on the back was all the controls so that somebody else could come, and there's a volume and a tone knob, I think, something along those lines. I put pickups. So it was an electric guitar of sorts. And then we made this pick. I took an X-Acto knife, took the blade out, and then put a pick in there instead of the knife where you could twist it and it would tighten around the pick. And then we attached that pick to his foot so he could move his foot to strum these strings. Plugged it into an amplifier, and then the magic happened. And so Travis had the genius idea of calling this thing a fetar. So we invented the fetar for folks who have other abilities and are able to move just their foot so that they can still thrash with the rest of everybody. So so the fetar was born.
And what I loved about that, and to me that for me is sort of a dramatic example, but it was this pinnacle moment of where creativity, innovation, maybe even even supernatural, I don't know, like promptings with the Holy Spirit, with imagination, I don't know, but it all comes together. And the moment Jeremy's foot I got chills unlike other times I've ever had chills. It just like you've said earlier, something that never existed in this world, at least in his context, existed. And on top of that, music that was not strummed by him in his disability was notes went into the universe.
Yeah. No, we took an impossible situation and made something possible.
Yes.
And it was really quite amazing. It was a fun experience to be a part of. And there's things that I've made and I look back on it and I'm like, how in the world did I even do that?
Right.
I mean, it just it would be daunting if I had to do it today.
Wow.
And because to come up with all the way it worked, to lay it out, the spacing of everything, the fact that we strapped that thing to his foot and he strummed a chord, it's pretty astonishing that it happened.
Yeah, it almost felt miraculous.
Yeah,
in a way that it could be for humans.
I felt just like a spectator in the whole thing, not really less of a participant, more of a spectator.
Wow. So a little bit like Geppetto and there's the moment. There's a woodworking reference.
Yeah, I'm a real boy.
So this is what I'm curious about. You're someone that I love being around because you're someone that you just I feel like you see the world with, I describe shiny eyes that see with curiosity and wonder in the everyday. You look for areas and things that maybe others don't see, or look behind things and just see the world. That's what I love about being with you. So what I'm thinking about with woodworking in your craft is you bring that lens, I feel like, into the world, but then you're also, with what you're doing with woodworking, that's making you in a way stretch you and having you see with wonder and curiosity, how can you design something? Do you feel like it's a two-way where you're bringing the lens of curiosity into woodworking, and that's so naturally then, you're a person full of wonder that's just feeding what you're doing with this craft? Or is it also the act of woodworking and how you it kind of is forcing you to have wonder, to look at projects from different angles and stuff like that? Does that even make sense? Like, is it?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Because we're just gonna go with it, even if it doesn't. Because that was so long of a setup.
Yeah. What was the first word? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that it does. I think that that wonder does help me to be able to come up with ideas, but at the same time, like you said, just it fills me back with wonder to
I love
think,
that.
how in the world did this happen? I mean, it's just it is quite amazing, the opportunities that I've had fill me with wonder. The fact that I've got calls before to I've made here's something. I've made 3 urns.
Wow.
You know, that somebody said, "I trust you with the remains of my
Wow.
loved one." I mean, it's just that to and just the whole process is awe inspiring
That
to
is
me.
sorry, I don't want to cut you off there. When you said that though, it reminded me of something, you know, I've shared before. I've lost my dad a couple years ago. My youngest brother Brett is has done a lot of woodworking, and he, you know, for Dad's memorial, he created an urn box.
Oh wow.
And we had some wood from our farm, our family farm, that became sort of the, you know, kind of the exterior of this thing. And I'll never forget though, Brett in his tribute to Dad in the memorial talked about the creation of that box. At some point, you know, he felt like this, it felt like such an honor, but it was this, you know, this is again, like you've said, it's containing the ashes of his own father. And so even in the creating of that thing, you talk about like a, wow, I mean, just this uh, profound experience. But he shared in a sort of a haunting way too, that Dad was an inventor, and, you know, so innovative, and he could figure all these things. Well, Brett ran into some trouble on a certain part of the project, and was thinking, as he's creating this urn for his own father, I wish Dad was here to help me finish the box.
Wow.
He didn't say it maybe in exactly, but that's what he said. And I was
Yeah.
just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Staggered me.
No, it is. I think that when you open yourself up to things like that, you know, there's a lot that because sometimes working with wood, and doing this, it's a very solitary um, process. You
Right.
know, most of the time I'm out here by myself, and I'm working through these processes and stuff like this on my own. And so in those, you know, when you had like for your brother, I'm sure it was very meaningful.
Yeah.
You know, the especially in a situation where you're making something like an urn,
Yeah.
you know, you can't help but to feel the weight of that.
Right.
And and I certainly have, and just it provides you time to think and to kind of focus your mind on what you're doing, but in that it's very contemplative, and other things can happen when you're in a contemplative state. It kind of opens up your soul to receive other things that a lot of times the noise
Yeah.
doesn't allow you to hear.
Oh, I love that. It just seems like that is being in this shop is itself almost a contemplative experience at times, or it could be if you.
It can be. It is often. It is not always. I don't want to make. I don't want it to sound like this is some sort of monastery. But it
Yeah.
has become a place where. All right, so here we go. The grandiose, right? So I'm coming out here to shape wood, and I have come out of this building shaped.
Wow.
You know, every morning I come out here, drink a cup of coffee, read the Bible, pray. You know, this is where I start every day is right where we're sitting. And sometimes I come out here and I go to the other side and I run saws and I'm saying, you know, whatever I'm doing, but it's that, you know, I've come out of here. This is a workshop for a lot of things, you know,
Yeah.
and I am being shaped in my own life,
Wow.
in this building, as well, you know, it's making me who I am, I guess.
By the master woodworker
There you
himself.
go. That's right.
That's man, that just kind of sparks something in my imagination. I want to have you respond to this, and I have a final question, sort of on just the intersection of faith here. But the great inventor and architect Buckminster Fuller, who designed the geodesic dome, among other things, brilliant architect and designer, has a beautiful and a fascinating line about sort of inventing. He says that when working, or actually how he looks at problems, when working on a problem, I never think about beauty. I think only of how to solve the problem. But when I have finished, if the solution is not beautiful, I know that it is wrong.
Wow.
Do you, I mean, I know you're just hearing this not fair to you to really respond. I'm throwing this great line to you. So you're maybe hearing this for the first time kind of, but does that resonate with you in terms of what you're doing and seeing on, cause there's a lot of stuff you talk about a puzzle and solutions and sort of, it's like there's this craft where you're walking in beauty, but you're also walking in design and building and math, and all of this is converging together. So do you kind of feel that sense of like his connection to beauty and things being right and wrong, as you can kind of even visually see that or feel that?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly see that. It is the first time I'm hearing that. I like that quote, but I think it's from going from disorder to order. I think that there is a beauty in order. As we look at the creation narrative of when God made something and then said it's good, he took disorderly things and made them orderly.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, like a kid, it's very messy.
Right.
Kids are very messy. They're very noisy. So it's not order in the sense that it's a polished thing sitting on a mantle,
Right.
but you're taking like this kid in their fascination, in their wonder, all of these things that make kids amazing and wonderful is orderly because that's what they're designed to do.
Wow.
So and this is all off the cuff. I don't have anything
here we
written
go.
down. So I may change partway through. But as you have a design, an idea, an image of a finished piece or whatever, you're taking all of these disparate components, putting them together into an orderly fashion that is the design of the maker.
Right.
So as that comes together, it has its own beauty as an element of it.
Wow.
So
yeah.
whether that's a song, so as a songwriter is putting together these notes, these chords, these words, these ideas and phrases, it all comes together into a song, which is order, which is beauty. The same works for whatever medium you have, whether that be paint or whatever, or woodworking. And so the design that the creator has is brought together into an orderly fashion. And yeah, I think that beauty is an attribute of that. But that beauty sometimes is just in the eye of the beholder, and some people look at it and go, "What is that you've made?"
Right. Yeah.
So it's not universal beauty, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love that because for sure, you're living in this world of beauty in both in terms of what you're creating and the output and the outcome. But then even in the types of wood, I mean, you could talk for all day on just even that, but how you're sourcing beauty to kind of work with in the raw material of it as well. So
that's a whole
that's another separate
podcast.
episode for all those really geeking out. For all two of you still with us and geeking out.
That's right.
Okay, so let's land this plane here, and you've already alluded to faith so much throughout this talk, and the creator and the creative process and order and all these things, but kind of putting a bow tie on this of like, where have you felt faith intersecting your craft, and or how do you feel God's presence in the wood shop?
I think that, as I mentioned, part of it is by connecting with people. finding that common ground with people through this creative art is very special. I think it's very, I'm a big believer in community, so I think that that's a big thing. Again, just the creative aspect, reflecting what has happened, what I feel has happened in me, as a person who follows Jesus and believes in Jesus. I feel that I have been shaped into something new, something that I wasn't before, that I've been crafted into what I am. And so when I do that, I think it's a reflection, I think it's a testimony of sorts of the ways in which that process happens in one's life. If you see that imagery in the Bible, even where we're kind of compared to like jars of clay. There's a lot of workmanship that goes into that. There's a lot of intentionality and design, and I think that for myself, I feel that being somebody who creates things, it's all I can do. It gets to the point to where I have to do this thing. I have to make this thing. It's almost a compulsion sometimes, not always, but sometimes, and I think that it's a reflection of that, and for me, it's gratitude, to say for today, I have the ability to do this.
Right.
I have the capacity to do this. I have the means to be able to do this. So to ignore it and to not do it is not gratitude. What's that? Disgratitude?
Disgratitude?
Ungratitude?
Ungratitude?
I don't know.
Ungrateful?
I don't know. A-gratitude? But, so I think for me, it's a way to give back, and to be a good steward of the things that have been placed in my hands. And then, and then practically, I guess, that I do sell things and I do earn money by doing so. And then to be able to in turn take that money and then to do things that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do.
Sure.
On a global level. That's
Right.
not that much, but to the ability to reach around the world or across the street or whatever, and to do whatever God is leading me to do there. So it just, I don't know. I don't know if that made any sense, but I think it's a communal way. It's a way for me to commune with God. He's the one that's given me these abilities, and so I commune with Him when I do it. Like a bird flies. I think that's the way a bird communes with God. He gave him wings. He gave me this ability, so it's a communal thing that I can share. And that's not to say I float around my workshop like a cherub. I certainly don't. But I don't know. I think it just is a reflection to give back.
Yeah. Oh man.
I'll stop talking.
No, so many great things there, and I just love to, just like you said, even the process of creating something that sort of didn't exist. Images, God as creator creating us, the world, the process of being redeemed daily by His work is this visual representation seen even in like what you're doing with projects and work, and it's being refined and shaped and formed and kind of visually seeing, like you said, like as a craft, but what's also happening internally as a Christian. I love that. So we'll share some of this in the show notes in terms of, but where can we find Sixth Interval and your work? And
most of my content goes on to, it starts at Instagram at Sixth Interval Designs. If you search that, you'll find it. It feeds from there into Facebook. So on both of those platforms, it's all the same content, but you can find it there. I do have a website that it is grossly in need of updating. It's just sixthinterval.com, I think. Isn't that terrible? So sixthinterval.com. And then, so you can find me there. You can reach out. You would be able to find my email and ways to connect. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome.
And just, I think this is great. I appreciate you asking me to do this. This is fun.
Yeah.
This is my first time doing anything like this. So it's, I'm sure I've talked too much because I have the capacity to do that, but I do appreciate it. Lots of fun, and yeah, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to have Everett on some more. This is just one episode we want to cover on woodworking, and there's lots of other topics he and I can cover and would like to do that. Be sure to check out in the show notes links to Sixth Interval Designs, Everett's business, and we have the link for the premiere of when Jeremy played the FITAR for the first time, the story we were telling in the podcast. Check that out. It's pretty cool. I'm going to give you some parting words from Annie Dillard. I think it's a beautiful way to look at the ordinary and to cultivate what's around us. She says, "We are here to witness and abet creation, to notice each thing so each thing gets noticed. Together we notice not only each mountain shadow and each stone on the beach, but we notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature so that creation need not play to an empty house." Hope you have an awesome day.